All right, welcome to Get on the Arc, and I'm here with Noel Roberts, who's had a 30-year journey as an entrepreneur in the salon industry, and she started in Oregon before she relocated to Arizona in 1999. And as a single mom raising two boys, now 19 and 22, her consistent goal is to install the values and rewards a good work ethic and provides that provides and whatever the challenges are. And the past 4 years, she's been brought academic success when she launched the first honors program on campus podcast. Student Lens is the name of your podcast.
It was, yeah.
Served as the president of the Phi Theta Kappa and was chosen by the school president to deliver the valedictorian speech to the class of 2000 as the first generation Syrian American graduate. So earning a bachelor's degree in criminal justice studies at Northern Arizona.
Yeah.
And Noel's experience at the 2020 Arizona election audit revealed severe mismanagement in the state's election process, prompting her active political engagement. So, she saw the challenges and the problems and was like, hey, let's get it fixed. And the following year, she became an elected precinct and state committeeman. Yeah. And went on to manage campaigns for the Arizona GOP chairman and congressional candidate, and currently serves as the Independent Women's Network Phoenix co-chair, board member for Freedom Academy Charter School, and to Patriots of Arizona, one of the state's leading unifying organizations. So her handle is the Patriot Mom 007. And Noel hosts the American Perspective podcast, which focuses on Arizona politics, has been called to report for totalnews.com, and recently organized the Arizona segment of Take Our Border Back Convoy, a 3-state rally. And you led the Yuma.
Yes.
And it also included Canada and spotlights the crisis of the southern border, and continues the efforts and grounded in spirituality and integrity and aim to affect meaningful change in Arizona and ensure a safer, more secure place for your children. So welcome. I love that it's amazing what you're doing. And
yeah, Darren, you and I were involved in different ways, and we met recently at Take Our Border Back. On our call, you mentioned that I did not remember, but we went again on a call last week with our friend Michael after we were all at Clay Clark in Oklahoma a few weeks ago. And that really opened up a lot of doors and meeting new people, which is great. I was so glad I ended up going. But yeah, what you mentioned on my bio, I mean, I am involved in a lot of different aspects of Arizona just because now that my kids are a little older, they're on their own now. Well, they're still with me, but they're paving their way in full-time work and whatnot. And then they're just, with their friends all the time. When they're snowboarding really is what they do out here when they're not at work, if you can believe that. My son's today at the mountain. Actually, he ran up to the mountain before this season ends. So yeah, it just was important that I know what's happening in Arizona on different levels. And so with my kids being young adults now, I was always very protective, of course, of my kids. And we lived in safer times the last 20 years. But now knowing what I know, I have to be involved because, number one, I want them to be educated about where they live and what's happening in our state and their county, their city. And also, I want to do what I can since I can't be a hands-on mom anymore. And I was what you call a helicopter mom. I didn't know what that meant, but my boys were like, Mom, it means that you're always hovering around us. Oh, really? That's what that meant? I didn't know. And I'm like, well, I don't see like a problem with that. Like, I'm your mom. Isn't that what we're supposed to do? But now that I can't be a helicopter mom because they're older, my way of protecting them is knowing what's happening in our surroundings and trying to have a part in any way I can, legally and lawfully, I like to say, that will be protective of them as they go into their adulthood and fatherhood down the road, and husbandhood. And otherwise, what am I doing? I mean, I can't just go about my life and let them go about theirs. I'm way too involved for that.
So you've always had God in your life. You've kind of, grown up in the Christian Orthodox Church, and so you've always been led, by God, and so, you're at what point what brought you to the Patriot Mom? Like what was the, and how do you get connected to this movement? You know, we call it a movement, but I see it's a movement of God, but I see, a lot of people are like asking questions about what's really going on, what's the truth, and what's the solution. I mean, that's the biggest thing. We see the problem. A lot of us see the problem, but what's the solution? So what brought you into that realm?
Well, I was fortunate. Somebody asked me to help them at an event here in Phoenix in 2021 in December, right after the pandemic. We were getting back into it. And Arizona opened up earlier than a lot of states. My son was back in school that 2020 October. And my salon where I work, we were operating, under the radar, frankly, because they did close everything down. But my clients were fine coming in with me, and I had to earn a living. So I continued on with my work, and I drove around the city without a mask. And I got to say, it was kind of nice in Arizona to not have anybody else on the road. I'm not going to lie. It was ghost town. It was a little eerie, but there was no cars anywhere. And I would drive here and there and get to where I wanted to be. And after all of that settled out for the world, we got back into it here, and I started broadcasting to help somebody out with their studio and create some content for them at a Charlie Kirk event, the America Fest. And there's 3 years of that now. And every year I go back and do more. And I've been fortunate to get with national personalities, congressmen, senators, and others. Even Richard not Richard Marx, a singer, Victor Marx. He works in the child trafficking industry. And I was really fortunate this last December that he came and interviewed with me. And he's an amazing gentleman, walks very closely with his faith. And what he does is nothing short of a miracle, saving children around the world, really, from trafficking and horrific situations. But getting involved with all of this, and in my state, I just sort of melded the two together, and Patriot Mom 007 kind of was just born, and it took off. And it really does describe me. I mean, some people might think, oh, she's a crazy patriot. I'm not a crazy patriot. I am a patriot. That's not a bad word. I don't know how it ever got a bad rap, but I'm a mom too, also. And the 007 kind of, I kid because it's kind of like a quiet joke with my kids. Like, I'm very like sleuth-like and spy-like around the house all these years. And so the 007 just kind of was born out of that, and it worked and it stuck. And some people, honestly, in Arizona don't even know my name. They just know Patriot Mom 007. So I primarily use that. But it was really less about the podcasting and more about helping to highlight. What I like to do is highlight people in our state. I come from a place of positivity, and I like to bring that. A lot of news is negative, and a lot of people tune out because of it. And even with our candidates, which I do a lot of work in the grassroots area and candidate driven environment, the candidates, you love them, you hate them. Some people know them, some people hate them, and they don't know them. And so my goal when I started talking to them around here was to have a channel that I could highlight them, whether I knew them, liked them, didn't like them. It didn't really matter. I was really just trying to go with a positive angle and give them an opportunity. I like to do a long format interview style, not a lot of clips and viral moments. I like just to sit down like this and chit chat, get to know the person, find out what makes them tick and why they're trying to be an elected official, and really what they do, like where their family is. I like to be more relatable and bring that to the people who might hear the interview who couldn't go to meet and greets around town. The candidates run around town out here. You could see them every day if you want to. They're always at an event. But we have a lot of older people in Arizona. They can't just drive 50, 60 miles a day running around town to these events, often at night. And so my goal was to kind of bring that to them. And it's worked out really well. I think what I do, I find people enjoy it, and I've gotten good feedback. So I continue. Unless I get bad feedback, maybe I wouldn't. But as long as it's positive and people like what they're hearing, I'm good with giving it and providing it. As far as, God goes and my religion, I was raised in the church, exclusively, Syrian Christian Orthodox. And a lot of people know it as Greek Orthodox because they have a kind of a bigger splash at like the Greek festival every year in all the communities, really big here too in Arizona and Oregon where I grew up. But the Syrian church, we have a festival as well too, and a big community day. And we're very traditional, very Old Testament and very basic Bible lessons. The whole 10 Commandments is kind of a big thing. And I know a lot of people talk a lot of spirituality, and that's great. I don't have a problem with any of that. But the basics, and I would say this would work for like today's school children, get back to basics. Like the basics are really what's important, really overall in everything, even in a job. You go off your path in your job, you kind of got to go back to the manual, look up your description, figure out what you need to do in your job. Back to the basics is always a really good rule of thumb. And so I believe in Jesus. We believe in the Holy Trinity. My cross, when we cross actually right to left. The Catholics do it the opposite. I still do it out of habit when we pray. We pray online a lot with friends of mine in different settings, and I still do that. It's a habit for me, but it's also because you and I were talking offline. There are rules for everything in life, and I know a lot of people don't like rules, nor do I. But some of the basics, the respectful ones, are really important. And I was raised at the end of a prayer, you cross, Father, you say Son and the Holy Spirit. And we do believe in the Trinity, that God the Father is in heaven. Mary is the mother of Jesus. Adam and Eve created sin in the garden. Somebody bit the apple. I mean, I know some of these are stories and we don't know exactly what happened, but we pretty much believe what was written in the book. And I don't really have a problem with it. A lot of people want to do the New Testament and some newer progressive things, and that's okay too. I think all our belief is the same at the bottom of, the end of the day. I think the thou shalt not steal, lie, cheat, covet. Even if we wouldn't put a religious label on them, I think they're just really good rules to live by. And especially the stealing and the cheating and the lying. So I don't think the religious thing people put a big emphasis on what religion you are these days, how you profess your religion. If you don't go to church every week, well, that's not good. If you don't take confession, that's not great, or communion. But I do believe, because I don't go regularly anymore, but that has nothing to do with my relationship and what I was raised to believe and how I feel about it. Something I don't really ever say too often, although I'll tell you, a lot of people, like I heard Penny on here the other day, your guest, and from the cafe. Great. She was great. So nice to listen to. And she has a story, of what brought her to Christ and the Lord and her belief system and why it's so strong. And a lot of people have a lot of really strong stories. You had another gentleman on, Mr. I think Tuttle, was it? Little or
Ivan Tuttle.
Yeah. So the whole death experience.
Yeah.
And those are pretty grand events, and you could put your finger on it. So I get that. So I don't have such a thing. If I do, I'm not aware of it. Maybe I'm not in tune like that yet. But I'll tell you this. When I was younger, so this is going to sound a little crazy, but I mean, no crazier than, knowing you died and you came back. So there's that. So when I was younger, I was on a plane. I used to fly from Portland, from Oregon, where I grew up in east side of Portland, to Allentown, Pennsylvania every year when we were younger, for like 10 years of our youth. After we left the East Coast, we'd go back for 3 months. My sister and I, she's my twin sister. So every year they'd send us back for 3 months for our summer vacation with our relatives. And one time, I'll never forget it. I can tell you this day, sitting on the left side of the plane window. I mean, I was young. I'd have to really think about it to put a number on it, but I would say probably 5, 6, 7. But we flew every summer, so I know it was during the summer. And out in the window, on the plane wing, on the left-hand side, I mean, I'm just going to say, I felt like I saw Jesus. It's even hard for me to say that out loud because of the way I was raised. It's such quite a statement. But I'm going to tell you, it wasn't a cloud. It wasn't like, oh, you saw a cloud figure. It was not a cloud. It was on the wing, like actually physically on the wing. And it was pretty visible to me. And it was very like specific. I'm not going to even go into like the details of what I saw just facial wise, just because everybody has their own vision, so that doesn't really matter so much. But I got to tell you, the feeling I have, and ever since then, you cannot ever convince me I didn't see what I saw. Now, I don't know if God's on the wing of a plane, keeping us safe. That's kind of how I took it, and I've always taken it as I grew up. Protection came to mind, but visually, it was an obvious circumstance outside the plane window. I mean, it wasn't like, I wasn't 30 on a business trip tossing back my third Bloody Mary on the plane. I mean,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Some people were like, "Oh, how many drinks did you have at the bar before you got on the plane?" Yeah, I was a child.
Yeah.
So then, it's clear-headed. But even today, when I talk about it, I can still see it. Like, I can literally sit here right now, as if I'm on the side of the plane. I could literally see it on the wing right now. So I've taken that through my life with me. And I don't know if that's some grand sign, some gesture that he is with us always, or pops up when we maybe are fearful. I don't know if I was fearful at that moment, but I do know in my heart that there is a God, even despite all the bad things that happen to us in our family and the world, which I used to question it. I used to think out loud, what is going on? I do not get why God, supposed to be so awesome, would do things to people. The best people really is what it seems to happen. But then they say, well, he always takes the best people because he wants them close to him. Honestly, I think that could be true. And to save them from the terrible things that are happening here, because they're such good people, they don't deserve to be, just burdened by things in the real life, physically on the earth. So I don't know if that's the answer, but I believe that it's not him coming down from heaven with his wand and saying you're getting cancer and you're going through this and war is going to come. I don't see that. I know a lot of people put a lot of emphasis and responsibility on his shoulders, like he's somehow making things happen. But really, it comes back to the basics, right? Somebody was in a garden. Somebody had an opportunity to take a bite of the apple or not, talk to the snake or not, and they chose wrong. And unfortunately for us, that sort of set the tone for our humanity down the road. And so we just have to make the right decisions now, knowing that we have the choice, and try to be on the right side of our decisions and our choices with other people. And that's just what I try to do and what I try to teach my kids all these years, more than anything.
Well, that's a great story, Noel. I really like that. I love it. You should share that more often.
As well, I mean, you know how it sounds. I mean, I saw God on the wing, plane wing, like that just there. And it's hard, there's no empirical evidence. Everybody who gives a testimony, no matter what it is, physical, something happens to them with near death or death and comes back, or some other grand gesture by, spiritual universe that gives them something or provides something to them when they need it, when they prayed or thought about it and then it happens. I mean, some of these things are coincidences, but they can't all be coincidences. That wouldn't make any sense in even a scientific data point sheet. Like, you can't have that many coincidences. So that's, impossible. That would be impossible, equation to have so many coincidences. So I just think that I carry it very close to my heart. I don't preach. I don't even really talk about my faith or my religion, but I know I have it. And when I pray to God. And I think he listens, and I believe he does. And again, no proof. We have proof in the way of these miracles that we see, and we can be grateful for those. And we can pray that what we believe is true, and that we're seeing what's happening, and we're the beneficiary of knowing that these are honest things that happen because of faith and belief. And I think that could be good enough. We can't all have things shown to us in big ways to talk about it. I mean, I'm an actions louder than words person, and I've always told my boys from the time they were very little, it was the one lesson. I thought, if I could instill one thing, it's please know, boys, actions speak louder than words. If somebody tells you a lot of stuff, but then they do the opposite or don't even do what they say, that's not okay. And we hear a lot of people preach, the Bible. A lot of people I know verses like literally like they're written on the back of their hands. And I find that to be quite an amazing thing, the feat. People who I know that can, any circumstance you can be in, a conversation with whoever, a group, sing, whatever, and somebody can literally pull out a Bible verse to that point of what's happening in the moment. I have a few friends that are really, really amazing when they do that. And I was like, my gosh, I mean, they're smart, first of all, but I feel like those people, that just flows out of them. Like you can tell it literally just comes out of their mouth and it's accurate. You could probably look it up to check if they're right. But when they're quoting words, so I don't do that. But then I don't think you need to do that.
Mm-hmm.
I think that me living what I believe and being kind to people, taking the high road, making the right moral choices. I mean, we're not perfect, so I'm sure I've made some poor choices as well, like everybody else in the world. We're all imperfect. But as you get older, the goal would be to make less and less bad choices and more, full of light choices and positive choices for you're not just yourself, but for those around you. And that's sort of where I'm moving in my life, is trying to do that with the people like you, like Michael. When I talked to Michael the other day, he's very inspiring. And even Clay Clark, I didn't know his area of faith, of what he was rooted in, and to see him in person, I honestly thought he just did a tour and hosted podcasters. I mean, I really didn't know. And I didn't know what he was so diversified in. It was pretty impressive, actually.
Yeah.
And the way he speaks. And I can appreciate that. People, I think, should hear those people and say, yes, I align with that. Amazing. And then the other people like myself who maybe don't have such a verbal way about their faith and their belief, I think people need to see that both sides work, and the quiet path is still the same path, right? So
how did you get connected to Clay Clark? Like what brought you to Clay Clark?
So I did an event in Phoenix in January 2021. It was the month after I started behind the microphone and helping somebody out. And then I did a bunch of interviews. And then he came back to Phoenix. I did a bunch of more interviews at that event. It was at Dream City Church, which we host a lot of events there in Arizona. Big church. And I knew about his tour. And then cut to this last August, I was actually working on a congressional campaign. I was supposed to go to Clay Clark in Vegas as a podcaster and have a table and do my thing. And then I took a job as a congressional campaign manager, and I ended up giving my table up and then just going in my capacity as that, and then booking my candidate on all the podcasts to get out his message for the campaign. But because I've been in the podcasting world for a couple of years now, everybody there, like I knew a lot of the people who were doing the podcasting, and I actually did a few little hits myself. Kind of, I just take my phone and, pop it up with whoever I can get a hold of walking around and just say, hey, can I get 2 minutes with you? So I did a little of it, but it was a little different for me to be there on the other side of it as a booker basically. And then a month ago, I heard about Clay Clark's business seminars in Oklahoma, and our Take Our Border Back group wanted to go as a team for team building, for advancing our narrative, learning how to put some things into play that we want to continue our messaging for Take Our Border Back. And so they talked me into it. I didn't want to go. In fact, I told them no. I'm like, no, I can't go. I'm way too busy. It's just not responsible for my time. But then they came back to me and said, Noel, we really want to go as a team. It wouldn't be right for 5 of us to go. So they basically encouraged me. I said yes. Couldn't be happier that I went. What I learned was invaluable, first of all, just from the basics of just the business side of things. But the networking, which is always a plus, which is my favorite part, was amazing. Like the people I met, so nice, in touch with many of them, will be for a long time. And maybe not on the levels like I thought, oh, I'm going to come back. I'm going to call these people. I'm going to call them for my podcast. But I'm still developing that. So you called me after a different phone call, which I thank you for. But I'm still kind of getting the program, like Clay said, is, hey, carve yourself some time out for this, even though I don't make any money at podcasting, and a lot of us don't. But it's still something you want to pursue. You really need to attack it on the schedule as you do everything else. And my schedule is pretty full. So I'm kind of now learning the business component. I need to start implementing that. And I am baby steps. But so when you called me for this, and my initial response is no.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I always interview people. So I was like, I mean, really? What does he want to talk to me about? But I, it's a weird feeling to be on this side of it because I'm a question asker, and as a manicurist for 30 years, I'm holding somebody's hand for an hour every day. Every appointment, I'm talking to them about their family, about their life, about they're catching me up on 2 weeks after I haven't seen them or 3 weeks. Hey, what's been going on with the kids and the grandkids? So it's always I'm on the other side of it. But I'm always glad to come on. And when we did take our border back, we actually did a lot of national press. It was quite a departure for me. I mean, Dan Ball had me on Newsmax, OANN. That was OANN. Rob Schmidt on Newsmax. On Daniel Baldwin, another OANN reporter, and then a lot of Todd Starnes, a big radio guy who I actually hadn't heard about a lot of these people. But so I did that circuit. I learned how to do that a little bit better and more comfortable. Still a little weird, I'm not gonna lie.
So
But
when did you meet, or how did you meet Kim Yeater?
so in December, no, I'm sorry, I met her at Clay Clark in August when I was there working the other side of the table. And she was interviewing, she was doing her podcast. And next to her, Scotty Sachs was doing his podcast for Sovereign Radio. They had two separate tables. And I booked my candidate with Kim. I thought, oh, wow, she looks amazing. Like she was very colorful and very friendly. And I walked up and said, can I book my candidate? And she's like, of course. And then Scotty was next door and I booked my candidate with Scotty and barely met them. Like, hi, how are you? Took some pictures. Mark Anthony, who's a sixth team member, he and Kim are friends. And so I kind of talked to him a lot. He was kind of floating like I was, like on the working side of the event. And then they came to Arizona in December, this last December, for the America Fest with Charlie Kirk. So they called me, and Kim called me and said, hey, what can you tell me about this? I want to get a table. So I gave her the lay of the land. She got hooked up. She got herself a table. Mark Anthony came in. Scotty Sachs did not. But right after that, they had gone to the border in late December after that event, and they saw what happened, what it looks like for real. And in January, they called me and said, hey, we've been talking, myself, Kim, Mark Anthony, Scotty Sachs, another gentleman from California, Mark Istratoff, who actually works for Sovereign as well, and then Robert Agee, who turns out in Texas. And we want to do this border event. We want to bring awareness. We all live on the southern border. We know what's happening. Oddly enough, millions of people still don't know what's happening on the southern border today, which is weird, but it's true. And so they said, would you help us in Arizona? And I'm 3 hours from the border. And what we see here now, where I live outside the city by about a half an hour, it is getting very dicey out here in the country. And when things come out to the country and they're not just the crime isn't in the city, that's really starting to be a big problem. I mean, it's a problem anyway. But when they start moving out of the city, we don't have any buses that run. We don't have a city bus where I live. We're in the country. So I said, yeah, 100%. I want to get involved. And it was put it together in 4 weeks. We all worked on it together. Every night we had phone calls. You were in some of them. And we organized the California rally, the Arizona and the Texas rally on February 3rd. Texas and me were in Yuma. We had a full day rally, an overnight stay where California had a 2-hour rally in the morning. They all caravanned, they convoyed to Yuma. And so in Yuma, we had about 1,000 people, or maybe more, maybe 1,200 during the daytime hours. They came from 30 states, Canada included. We had several families from Canada. And then Kim brought her whole group over from San Ysidro around 5:30 at night. They ended up coming to Yuma in the convoy from California. So all told, we had about 2,500 people in Yuma that day.
Wow.
And about 100 people stayed overnight in campers. The gentleman, Mr. Britton, owns Britton Farms for 85 years. He is in his 80s. He's legally blind. He gave us the property to use. He let 100 people camp out on the back property overnight. A lot of people gave donations, which we gave all the money to Mr. Britton. And we had food trucks there. We had vendors. We had some candidates. Elections are coming up, so it's important, although it was not political at all. But in Arizona, you just can't get away from it. You can't pretend it's not happening. So we like to bring the information and education here. And it was just a really good place for people to gather. And we had worship and we had prayer, and people got to network from across the nation with one another, which was a big goal of mine personally. Because as we travel around the United States these days, and a lot of people we know have RVs now, they're retired, they're moving around, going to different events. It couldn't be more important to know your neighbors, not just in your neighborhood, which is very important, but your community. But when you're moving around, you should know if you're going to be in the northern or the southern states, maybe you have 10 connections you met at my event in Yuma or at the Clay Clark event, and you can call and maybe you have a problem, or maybe you have a question, or maybe you just want to go to dinner with somebody. But if you don't make the connections and meet people in person, it's not happening. So part of my goal, I like to network people. I do it all the time. And that was just another way for that to happen. And it's been really a blessing that I was allowed and brought into the group from Kim when she asked me. I'm very fortunate to have been able to join them.
Wow. Yeah, Kim's an awesome podcaster and patriot, and she's got an amazing story too. But I met her in Vegas. Or no, I'm sorry, I met her in Miami at the Doral at the Reawaken, and she's the first podcast that I was ever on.
Oh wow, that you always it's always a big deal. Your first podcast, isn't it?
She interviewed me, so it was like, and I wasn't. It was just out of nowhere, but yeah, she's great. So here's the question I want to ask. We can kind of close it out with this.
Sure.
There's so many people that are I would say asleep or unaware, and you probably come across these people all the time. What's your, and I know I do, and I try and give them a couple channels or I point them a couple directions, maybe to at least open the door for them. What do you say to people or do for people that are just have no awareness, that still have the news as their authority, or what do you do with those people?
Yeah, it's really hard, Hey, listen, I still listen to the news too, even though I know some of it's not accurate. Some of it is accurate. So I would say get more educated. As Patriot Mom 007, you see a lot of my posts will say get educated, get involved. Those are the two, I think, main components of life these days. There's so much information swirling around out there. You have to source things. You can't believe what people say. You really do have to do your homework. And because there are so many sources, good and bad, legit and not legit, you kind of have to dig a little bit past the first page of Google to figure things out these days. But there are other resources. 1440.com is a kind of an independent news source. They just have like stories on there. Grassroots50.com here in Arizona. A friend of mine owns it. He aggregates information from all over in the 50 states and puts it on his website on Grassroots 50. It's kind of an aggregate news station. So you just need to find those resources and look past, your nose, as my mom used to say, look past the front page and dig deeper and talk to people. Arizona has a lot of resources, a lot of intricately involved people in elections and border and sex trafficking, in homeless situation and veteran situations. We have a lot of hot points here, as do many states, and it's only going to get worse for everybody. So do what you can near your neighborhood. Talk to your neighbors first and foremost. Know who they are. Meet them. It's okay to go knock on a door still. Take a plate of cookies. There's really nothing wrong with that. Cupcakes or something, just to say hello. Be friendly. Let them know that you're friendly. Don't live in the hermit cage that they've built for us after COVID, and don't let them push us back away from each other. Purposely network with each other, whether it's on podcasts, whether it's on social posting, or on the groups. We do Zooms now, and there's a lot of even churches you can plug in online and go to service, whether it's Pastor Jack Hibbs in California, who I do like his messaging, whether it's, there's a ton of online pastors now. You can find someone that you align with, that you believe in what they say, what they share, and go, and you can meet people on community platforms. And I think more than anything, getting back with each other, We've lost the neighborly connection. I grew up with it. You grew up with it. We need to bring it back before we're too old and it really dies out. So we've got probably a good 30 years, I think, in our category of life, solid 30 years where we can be out there. We could preach all the other stuff too, but let's network each other to death. Let's do that. If we do that, at the end of the day, we win. The IT industry doesn't control us as much. And I think that's important.
Well, yeah, amen to that. And that's what a great, I mean, connecting with people and being part of the community. I mean, that's huge. And that's, you know, we're built for that. I mean, that's what without that, we die.
We're an island. Yeah. No man is an island. That's a saying. I forget who, this is a writer. No man is an island. And so, it's hard. It takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of work. I do a lot of events around town night and day. And I was at one last night, and then I was one this morning, and it's a lot because you're tired. It's kind of like, and you're kind of running the wheel like a hamster, like not everything's really happening the way you want, as fast as you want, in the way you want, and you're not getting resolutions. But we always say here in Arizona, you have two options. You can keep doing what we're doing, being involved as much as you can, wherever you think is necessary for you, or you can stay home and not do anything. And then you better not complain. So those are our options. I'm pretty verbal, pretty outspoken, and try to do it in a nice way, though, in a kind way. And I choose B. I choose getting out there and getting involved for my kids. And I want to show my kids how to activate their lives as adults and be competent, caring, concerned, and participating adults. I don't want my kids to be those other kids who are the problem. I want my kids to be a solution down the road. And so everybody can find me. There I am up top, Patriot Mom 007. It's actually online. It's Patriot_Mom 007, Facebook, Instagram, Truth Getter, YouTube, Rumble, the backup channel, and patriotmom007.com also. And yeah, find me and engage with me. I'm trying to do more of that with like you, Darren, and our new group of friends. And I look forward to seeing you at our next meeting too.
Well, thank you, Noel, and God bless you, and God bless America.
Thanks for doing this, and thanks for having me.